Hi, everyone. It's Jeff Steck from Tylerica Marketing Systems in Austin, Texas. And Ian is really eager to say hi. Today on the podcast, we've got Ian Cantel from Outsource Marketing in Toronto. And then from Changescape Web in St. Charles, Missouri, as usual, Ken Tucker and Paul Barthel. Welcome, guys. Welcome to you, all of our listeners. So today we're going to discuss the topic that everyone loves to hate. No, not Yelp. We're going to talk about money, specifically budgeting for marketing. This is probably one of the biggest things we run into as consultants and agency owners and fractional CMOs as we start talking to clients. Is how much is it going to cost and what am I going to get from it? So it's a worthy discussion, I think, and probably one that we can circle back to several times over many episodes. But let's just kind of dig in and try and overcome that stumbling block. I've seen it lead to, failure to launch situations where many business owners will have an "if I build it, they will come" attitude, and then they wonder why sales don't materialize. And the answer is because they didn't market effectively or they didn't market enough. The road to business is littered with the remains of superior products that were not marketed effectively. So if you have that "if they build it, they will come" thought in the back of your head, really, I challenge you to rethink that. So let's dig in. And our first round of questions then is going to be about planning and research. And we'll start with Paul. So Paul, what are some of the key components of a marketing budget?
Well, okay, so everything, whatever you think your marketing budget is probably not enough. So you have advertising, pay-per-click, whatever, and that's just one component. There's a lot of companies out there that say that they do digital marketing, and it's really just paid advertising on different channels. So you have your advertising, and you have content creation, and you have the management fees of people that are going to manage this. And when you get into say pay-per-click, you have landing pages, you have your different campaigns, and then within your campaigns, like with Google Ads, you're going to have your ad groups and your ads, and each one of those ad groups, maybe even each one of the ads, would almost require its own landing page. And so it can turn into a lot of work. So if you have a small budget, you really want to figure out what you want to focus on. And then what channels do you need to be on? Because there's YouTube, there's Google Ads, there's the Microsoft ads that I've never seen anyone get any real results from. But you do have that. And then you have your social media channels, which that's kind of what they call disruptive advertising. But you really have to take some time and look at what you want to advertise, what channels you're going to advertise on, the content creation, the platforms you want to be on. And it's like you said, Jeff, failure to launch it, or sometimes it's not even that so much. It's just that it's not thought through and planned, and it's just kind of slapped together without any real research, competitor research, anything like that.
Yeah, it's a good point. You mentioned the different areas. The ad spend is only a part of it. You got to create ads. You maybe need videos. You need graphics design. You need content writing. I've literally had prospective clients look at me and I present them with a number, say, well, I'll just hire somebody to do that for me. And the answer is no, you won't, because one person can't write and do graphics and know the ins and outs of all the tools. And then, by the way, you need to buy some management platforms. So there's a lot of components, a lot of moving parts in the marketing world. So my next question, go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, I was just going to add too, one thing a lot of businesses, whether you're a dentist, whether you're an electrician, whatever the business is, I've seen it where business owners think they're going down a path of saving money on their marketing by having a receptionist or somebody take on components of their marketing, but those people have no experience, they have no expertise, they don't have the tools to do it. So not only is there the cost of them being pulled away from their current roles. But the biggest thing, I think, is the opportunity cost that the business is going to miss out on, and by not having the marketing done well. So, but where it applies to budget is like, how are you including that person's time and energy and efforts and the tools and everything that they'll need in-house in order to do that work? Because that's often overlooked because it's just a gut reaction to save money, and it doesn't actually save money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And your competitors will thank you for the missed opportunity costs.
Correct.
Really, I'm shocked, Ian, that you didn't beat me to this punch, but marketing strategy informs how you put together your marketing budget. Paul rattled off several different channels, and you can only know those channels and start to pull this all together once you understand who your ideal customers are, where they spend time online. If you don't have a product yet and you're just trying to launch, you need to do competitor analysis, see what's going on in the marketplace, see what your competitors are buying and are doing, and also what are they making when they sell products. Is there even demand for your solution, product or service? So that's a critical component that has to be addressed. And as we've talked about numerous times, unfortunately, it's one that's almost always skipped.
Yeah. You brought up a good point too that I didn't want to get missed either. That if you bring somebody in-house, like offload some work to somebody, don't forget that now costs you as a budget item, like your personal time. The most expensive person in your business is usually the business owner, and you've now become a marketing manager for that person too. But Ken, the strategy is paramount. Yeah, if you don't have that, how do you even know what you should be spending money on?
Yeah, good point. We talk about advertising, we talk about content, but you got to know the audience, right? You got to know their pain points and what they're going to respond to, and even where. I literally have seen customers spending a ton of money on Facebook for an audience that isn't on Facebook, and then they wonder why sales don't materialize.
Yeah,
because somebody, probably a Facebook consultant told them you should be advertising on Facebook. And if you don't have that strategy and the demographics and psychographics of your ideal client profiles nailed down, thumb in the wind.
That's a real chronic problem, honestly, with franchises, in my opinion. And I'm going to lump in realtors as a part of the franchise model because they work under a brokerage. And so they're constantly being told, spend money here, spend money there. You put stuff over here, put stuff over there. There's no rhyme or reason. There's no guidance. There's no research to back it up. And sometimes it's mandated and required as just a necessary part of the spend, and the budgets are set, whether they make sense or not for the franchise, because of the program that they bought into. It's a real shame. I mean, franchisees really fall victim to, in my opinion, to really bad marketing advice very fast and waste a ton of money.
100%.
Yeah, you mentioned realtors. I've seen realtors spend way more money than they need to on specific tactics. I've even told them I can save you 50% on it, and they go, "Yeah, we're good." And then when I say, "Here's something you really should consider," they're doing, they're like, "Nah, I don't know."
Yeah,
we specifically don't work with realtors, by the way. Ian, let me maybe jump to you for the next question. Thanks, Ken, for kind of hitting that importance of market research and strategy and really knowing where you're going. But one of the other questions I get asked a lot, and I'm sure y'all do too, is what kind of ROI can expect? You want to dive in on that one, Ian?
Massive. No, there are so many factors in this. First of all, and I know we're gonna get into the in-house marketers versus outsourcing discussion later on, but even that variable alone has massive repercussions for your return on investment. The other side of that coin too is, and this is where going back to Ken, and strategy is so vital, because if you don't have a strategy, you're just throwing things against the wall, hoping they stick, right? That's not a strategy. Shotgun approach is not a strategy. So your ROI, your return on investment, your return on marketing investment, which is the correct way to actually look at your marketing budget, your marketing spend, as an investment, if it's working properly, you will get $100 back for every dollar you spent. You will get $1,000 back, right? It differs. But the first thing you have to do is have measurement in place so that you can effectively understand what you're spending on your budget, because there are some things that get hidden very easily or misplaced into different budget items, right? Is a t-shirt advertising your business part of your marketing budget? It could be, it might not be, right? So but then being able to track, effectively, how many new customers are we getting through our marketing efforts? So if you can't track that, you can't determine your return on investment. So one of the key things that we work really hard with our clients on is to make that connection as close as possible. In most businesses, you rarely get 100% connection between your marketing efforts and following the trail of the buyer's journey all the way through the sales process, then the landing of the client, unless they've got a really great CRM that can integrate with the marketing tools, which I think a lot of us are using, but not every client is. So for our clients, we find we advertise that you're going to get at least, with some stipulations, at least a 5 times return on investment, because we easily blow that out of the water with our clients. Like we've seen it where it's 2,500 times return on investment with some clients. But again, there are so many variables. But if you invest wisely, using first of all a strategic plan to guide your efforts, just like you would when you're choosing financial investments, you want to be strategic about that. That's why your financial investor asks you all sorts of questions about your risk level, where you are in your life as far as how liquid your assets need to be, all sorts of things, right? But just like they would ask you that, your strategic marketing plan also uses a lot of strategic elements to determine what we should be doing to get you the best return on investment. I know that's not in you'd probably like some really solid answers.
Yeah,
but we see it all over the board. But
Yeah.
I always answer it depends, and I think your 5x is a good starting point to shoot for. Early stage businesses, small businesses may not even get that, but I think 5 to 6x is a good average, maybe industry average, a good norm. And then certain tactics are going to be huge.
Yeah,
email. I think we've talked about email before, and email is what, like a 35 or 38 to
42,000, isn't it, or 4,200?
4,200,
which would be 42x then. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So
I think it's important to realize too, though, that when we talk about ROI, while your ad spend or your marketing budget may be allocated monthly, you need to give it room to breathe, because there are startup costs, there are upfront investments in infrastructure, in content creation, graphic design work, as you mentioned, Jeff. And so some things are going to have faster return on investments than others. And so I think it's important, when you're looking at this, that you need to factor in there are short-term, midterm, and long-term, and don't prejudge the long-term benefits that you're going to get from a strategy ROI-wise, because it likely is going to be the one that's the most powerful for you. Specifically in my mind, search engine optimization. But that isn't just flip a switch and boom, you're getting 5 times return on investment.
Yeah, you gotta spin up the flywheel, right?
Yeah.
What's interesting too is that when you do things properly, so first of all, as I said, measurement's really important, because you have, as a business, have to know actually how much it costs your business to land a new customer, right? It's different for every business. It's actually different for every business within an industry, within a geography. You start by benchmarking. And I think that's where the research becomes so important, is that without benchmarking, without having a starting point of where to track and measure, you're going to be in the dark. And so that's where that's so important. But just like what you said with SEO, like we see 1,000% increases in SEO, and the return on investment continues to increase when it's done properly, because it's like a tree. You plant it, it gives you shade, it gives you fruit, and it continues to grow. Whereas other things like paid advertising, you only get to eat what you kill with that, right? As soon as you stop hunting or paying the advertiser, you don't get any more fruit from it, right? So
Yeah.
So I think, one of the things with ROI, when I talk to clients, the first thing is defining it, right? What is it? It's what you spend, get that back, and then a multiplier of everything else. So in other words, if you spend $1,000 and that generates $6,000 in revenue, and we're typically talking about top line revenue too, right? Not profit, but top line. Then you're spending 1,000, you get it back, and now you have an extra 5,000. So that's a 5x ROI. And on that sense, if I said, hey, I could put a machine in the corner of your office, and every time you went over and put $100 bill in it, would give you, $600 bill, $100 bills, $600 bills back. Would that be a good deal? Well, yeah, I do that all day long, right? So when you can get that machine built and up and running and hitting those numbers, well, why wouldn't I do it? Why wouldn't I just add more, crank it up, build over time? But you got to start someplace. And anything you want to add, Paul or Kim? Or go ahead, Ian.
I was just going to add one thing. What you said about the value of a new customer, it's so important to define that well, because for some businesses like dentists, other medical fields, anywhere where you have like steady return, retainer-based customers or patients, it's important to actually give yourself a window of value as well, meaning the average dental patient lasts for 7 years. The average value for a lot of dental practices is $10,000 to $15,000 within those 7 years, right? Like, you need to look at it like that, because you haven't landed a preventative care person. When they first come in, they get their teeth x-rayed, they get a cleaning done, might be a few $100s. That's not the value of the patient. The value of the patient is the long-term, assuming you do a great job and you can retain them. That's how you should be looking at the return on investment as well.
Right. The customer lifetime value is the buzzword we use, right? Looking at the overall, the duration of the time they're with you. SaaS software companies are another good one, right? They may spend, $100 to get a $29 a month user on board, because that $29 a month user is going to stick around for 2 or 3 years at least. So while they're losing the first, 2 or 3 months, they're making it back over time. Again, customer lifetime value. I was going to say, before we jump, Ken, Paul, anything you want to add on the ROI or the overall bucket planning and research category?
I'll just say that, I kind of use a formula to where I kind of try to back into some numbers. And, again, I think people need to be specific, and they need to understand, because you may make a marketing investment to grow a specific part of your business. If you offer water damage repair, you offer mold remediation, and you offer fire restoration services. Every one of those has different economics behind it. The lifetime value of a customer, the frequency of purchase, can all be different. The profitability, the desire of your staff to want to do that work. You might spend a lot of money to get work that actually your staff hates, that drives them out the door, and then you can't hire back and backfill replacements fast enough to keep up with the volume. So you got to look at this in as a big picture. You have to look at, you can't just generically slap this stuff together. So now, having said that, there are some simple calculations I think you can do to kind of build a sanity check, and you're only going to get there over a period of time. Again, you can put the best metrics in place, measure them, know that they're being measured accurately, and that's still not going to be the meaning that you need to be able to derive to your business to make good long-term business decisions. You've got to give it room to breathe and collect the data before you have enough data to really make those decisions. But having said that, I like to use a formula. It's when people say, how much should I be spending? Which, by the way, nobody ever asked that. They already have in mind, I'm going to spend $500. So it's like, okay, well, if we spent $500, what is that going to get us? And so you can kind of do some calculations that way. What I think is a better way to start is to say, how many leads do you want? And, how many leads do you need? How many leads can you actually service? And then from there, look at if I drive X number of leads, how does that really shake out? Okay, well, I know that my close ratio for cold leads, don't use your current ratio if you're mostly driven by referral based or word of mouth marketing. Don't assume that every lead that comes in the door is going to be 80% close rate. We're talking about cold strategies here. We're talking about people who don't know you, who find you on the internet through a variety of means in some cases. In other cases, yeah, it's going to be referred business. But think about the source and think about how you're trying to build your marketing campaigns and the components that go in there. So, as an example, if it's cold traffic, people who visit your website and fill out a contact form on your website, how many of those people do you actually close to get appointments? Okay, maybe a third of those. Because again, they don't know who you are. What is the, so that means that out of 100 leads, you might get 33 opportunities. Out of those opportunities, how many of those opportunities turn into customers? And out of those customers, what's the average deal size that they're buying? And again, if you're an HVAC contractor, are you calculating that number based on customer lifetime value? Are you calculating it based on replacement of HVAC units, air conditioners or heaters, depending on the season? Are you trying to just get more, twice a year cleaning checks so that you can kind of build that relationship with a customer? You got to understand all of that. So there are ways that you can kind of back into that. But if you look at the end of the day, here's an example for an HVAC contractor, 100 leads, your close rate is, or you get 33% real opportunity. That's 33 people. You close a third of those. That's 11 customers. Average replacement of an air conditioner, just conservatively, $5,000. That means you're generating $55,000 worth of projected revenue from those 100 leads. So you can kind of use some basic calculations to help you kind of back into a marketing budget. But again, you've got to be very specific and you got to know what you're doing. And that's even before you try to attribute how much do I need to spend on a particular channel to drive that 100 leads. You just need to see, first of all, what's the possible benefit of me, moving forward with this marketing initiative.
So you jumped into the central question, which is how do I set a budget, right? And you've hit goal driven hard, which is, I think most of feel free to chime in, guys, but it's a discussion I try and get to too. Because too often people have that, I've got $5,000 to spend, or, well, I only want to spend 3% of my revenue. And there's discussions around whether that's realistic or not. But I'm an engineer by background, so I love numbers and spreadsheets. But you got to walk people through, and you can either go top down like you did, or you can go bottom up. It costs, on a given, using your HVAC example, on a given HVAC example, if it's going to be $5,000 to do the job, I'm willing to spend $500 to get the job. That would be a 10x, right?
Right.
So now what does it take if I have $500 to get that job and I want to get 10 of them a week? I should be willing to spend $2,500 $5,000. You work the math up, right? And use your close rates and and then compare. Now, how many ad impressions do I need to buy, or how many website visits do I need to see, and do the numbers line up, right? Can I get starting at the top when I know I'm going to have a lot of fallout on the way down the funnel? Do the numbers line up that my ad spend to get those sales is going to work out? So that's a calculation we go through a lot. And I think it's a realistic way to do marketing. It's also an eye opener for a lot of businesses.
Well, sadly, if you go to a lot of, seminars about starting and running your own business, or even if you've already been doing it for a while and you're attending some of these things, they'll talk about the need for you having an accountant, for hiring an attorney, for, doing this and doing that. But you know what they always forget? They always forget to tell you that you need to have a marketing strategy and a marketing budget in place, and probably even a marketing provider.
And if you don't, you're at risk of getting it imposed on you. Then we're back to the other easy way to set marketing budgets, which is I've got a fixed amount. Well, where did that come from? That's a question I always ask. I've got $5,000 a month to spend. How did you determine that? Oh, I don't know. It's just what I thought was reasonable.
Yeah.
Or that's what I'm
paying.
That's what I'm paying now.
Right.
But you're talking to me because it's not working, right?
Yeah.
or then they may say, well, I have a percentage range, and percentage ranges aren't terrible, but you always got to I always say, let's look at it from different angles, right?
Yeah.
And percentage ranges aren't terrible, but you still got to ask the question, does that make sense?
Yeah. Because if you're looking at annual revenue, there's a huge swing there, right? I mean, if you're a $100,000 a year company right now, a 20% marketing budget still doesn't buy you a whole lot.
Yeah.
But then the question is, can you service the business that would buy you in the first place? Because you kind of have to start to grow and bootstrap and kind of position yourself into the growth that you're going to see. If you're talking about a 5% budget of a multi-million-dollar company, that may not even be accurate. That may be way more than is potentially needed. It just depends on so many different factors, and you've got to do some sanity checking, and honestly, you have to. You can't just be a marketing consultant. You also have to understand how businesses actually work and operate. And sadly, I spent a good decade of my early career, selling to the federal government. And fortunately for me, it was a great experience because when I sell to the U.S. federal government, I have to have rate buildups. So I have to know what my actual real numbers are profitability wise. I have to know what my direct labor costs are, what my overhead costs are, what my profit is, what my general and administrative expenses are. And too many businesses, and we see this in a time of stressed economy, they put together a budget out of thin air, or because they see their competitors
or wishful thinking.
Right, wishful thinking, or they see that that's what the competitors are charging, so they're going to knock theirs down just a little bit lower. It's not built up with real supportable financial numbers. Yeah. And so, if you don't understand that you've got that solid foundation in place for your business, before you can't even build up a marketing budget.
Yeah.
And one of the things too is that business owners often, even though they know there's a competitive landscape around them, like in my town, we have 23 dentists, another one's opening up, right? We're not a huge town, but the dentists in our town sometimes think they live in a bubble or isolation when they're thinking about their marketing, right? They can't. So where that applies to your budget is that if your competition is very high, and if your competition, so we serve windows and doors companies as well. If that is a super competitive industry, and the price tag for the services are quite high, they make good money, but it also means that because of the competitive nature, the cost to capture a lead, especially in a digital world, is very, very high. But if you don't understand that as the business owner, especially since COVID, right, where now advertising spend doesn't go as far because there's more competition, you need to take all of that into consideration because it's so important.
Yeah, the competitiveness of the market for sure. And I think we hit on this a little earlier, but it's worth reiterating it very succinctly, is where the size of the business, where you are in your business. Early stage businesses, startups, true startups, if they're got backing, which they probably need if they have big plans, they may operate at a loss for a year, 2, 3 years, because they're building that market share. You talked about that earlier, Ian. And any business that's going to start up, I remember going to a networking group, listening to a woman talking about starting a jewelry design business, and it was pretty clear that she wasn't ready for the kind of marketing that we do. So I tried to give her a tip, and she was talking about building an e-commerce website. I said, well, it sounds like what you need is blah, blah, blah. And I gave her, the where she should go look. I said, it's about $100 a month. She's like, $100 a month? I can't afford that. And I didn't respond to it. But what popped into my head was, well, good luck starting a business.
Yeah.
If you can't afford $100 a month to start a business, then you probably shouldn't be trying to start a business. Early stage companies, growth companies, they're going to spend a lot on marketing, potentially operating at a loss, but for sure, they're not going to be able to do it on 5% of top line revenue. And I mean, work it backwards. Let's say that they're going to have $1,000 a month in revenue and they're going to spend 5%. So you're going to get, $50 worth of marketing a month. How much can you do for $50? You can barely take a family of 4 out to eat for $50. You're not going to get a lot of marketing done. So you got to expect to spend more if you're early and small.
Yeah, and it's like sadly, I see this with a lot of brick and mortar type businesses. The cost of renting the space is really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's a restaurant or a boutique, a jewelry store, whatever it is, just because you build it doesn't mean people are going to come.
Yeah.
And yet you have those hard costs that are costing you every month. And what I find too often is, and this is I think one of the reasons why failure rates for retail businesses and in particular restaurants is so high, is because it's all people can do to get the doors open. They have no cash reserves to make the marketing investment and kind of ride out that time period. Look, the number of restaurants that wind up getting dozens of people lining up at the doors for the first 3, 4, 5 weeks that they're open to build up that business, they're few and far between.
Mm-hmm.
That is absolutely the exception rather than the norm. And so, when you're doing, when you're building a business that is very costly to run and operate from the get-go, you also need to set aside, I think, roughly the equivalent in a marketing budget to make sure that you can spend the money to get people to start to cover those operational costs.
And a corollary to that is, if you're not running a business that needs brick and mortar, don't rush into it. I mean, to a lot of business owners, that's almost an ego point, right? Oh, look at our storefront location with the fancy sign in front. Well, that's great, but who's coming to it, right?
Yeah.
We're up front with everyone. We operate out of our home. We have a distributed team. We don't need a brick and mortar location. A lot of businesses can start out that way, particularly service businesses. They're always out in the field. They're dealing with customers at their homes. Why do they need a location? I mean, maybe a designer or something, but by and large, most service businesses don't need people to come in. I've seen some that are spending thousands of dollars a month to have an office. And why?
Yeah.
They don't. So, don't let it be an ego trip, and put the money where it will give you, taking it back to our earlier topic, the best ROI.
Have you guys run into this? I've run into this a fair bit, especially related to dentists, but I've also had it in other industries where, you're talking about marketing spend. It could be with an existing client, because this has happened as well, where they go to, it could be an association trade show. They hear some speakers, or they look at industry averages or something through an association or through some body that, does some statistical analysis. And they come back to you and they say, oh, this says we should only be spending 2 to 5% of our revenue per year. And you're like, yeah, but if you cut your marketing budget by that much, would you expect to be getting the results you get now? And then the other side of that is to understand that in every industry, regardless of which industry, there are those that spend $0 on marketing and may be highly unsuccessful, but some might be successful. They're the exception usually. And then there's those that overspend on marketing by a whole bunch because they're not doing it strategically, right? So like industry averages are one of my pet peeves for sure, but I don't know if I'm the only one that runs into that, but I've run into it a few times.
So if I were to sum this area up, I think setting a budget, goal driven is the best way to do it. Kind of
Absolutely.
engineer that funnel, work from the customer acquisition costs backwards, and always sanity check and ask questions. Top down is probably the worst. I've got, $5,000, just figure out what you can do with it, because that's like, and especially if you go to the wrong person, the wrong agency, they'll find a way to spend it,
Yeah.
at least for 6 months until you fire them. And then once you get up and running, you can do some of those industry average comparisons you were just talking about, Ian, the percentage ranges. And typically it's going to be, I've heard 5 to 10%, 7 to 12%. I usually tell people 5 to 10%,
I tell
but
them
that's
10
not
to 20.
not where you start. What's that, Ian?
I usually say 10 to 20 if you're an aggressive business that
Yeah.
wants to grow aggressively.
Exactly.
Because
New or more aggressive, and startups may even go to 30 or may operate at a loss overall.
Yeah.
And then again, be mindful of those minimums. If you're small, especially,
Yeah.
a percentage breaks down, because like I said, you're not going to do much marketing on $50 a month.
Well, and just real quick before we move on, I mean, right now we work with a lot of businesses that are honestly, they're just saturated. They can't take on any more new business because, for a variety of reasons, but a lot of times it's driven because they can't hire the people to fulfill extra work. That doesn't mean you cut and stop your marketing budget. That's a massive mistake, because guess what? If you stop, you're going to be quickly leapfrogged by your competition, because marketing, with AI, it is not making marketing cheaper. Everything in marketing, all of the factors are making marketing more expensive than ever. The cost
Making
of
it happen
ads,
faster. So there's
and
more to keep
faster.
up with, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. The cost of ads has increased by 25% year over year for the last couple of years. The competition levels have dramatically increased. The volume of content that needs to be created from an SEO perspective, continues to increase. And sure, there are AI tools that may help you do that, but if you're just relying on AI and you're not adding that human expertise on top of it, you're getting crap. You're getting stuff that's maybe you're spending less money, but it's not getting you ahead. And if you're going to be making an investment in marketing, I would think that you would want to, worst case scenario, stay where you're at, and best case scenario, see the exponential growth, or the 5x growth kind of thing that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Don't save your way to the bottom. Right.
Paul, you've been quiet here. Anything you want to chime in on, or I got a question I can go to you with if you don't want to chime in on anything?
Asking.
I guess we've kind of touched on a lot of things, and I think it's important to realize that marketing is everything you're doing to build your business, acquire customers, and paid advertising is one part of that. And you have to understand and be realistic about the different channels, because the unfortunate reality is with pay-per-click, and specifically Google Ads, the more money you spend, the better your ROI is going to be. That's just reality. And if you're not unless you're very focused or you have very little competition, if you only have a few $100s to spend, you might be better off spending it somewhere else besides pay-per-click.
Yeah,
But it
if
needs
your
to
budget
fit-
is low, it's going to be a lot of sweat equity too. But there
Yeah.
are some things you can do. Some is better than none, but it's not as good as a full system.
Well, it just means that you have to be laser focused even more on your targeting. If you've got a smaller budget, you can't run ads for the entire service area that you might want to support at that budget. So then you're going to have to pick winners and losers. Where am I going to spend this money? Where am I going to have my ads displayed? And it may be a 10th of the service area that you want to support.
Yeah.
But the great thing
don't
about
keep
ads is,
expanding your geography, right? I see
Yeah.
that mistake
Yeah.
a lot. Oh, we got to expand our geography. We're not getting enough leads. Well,
Yeah.
no, your budget's too low.
yeah,
That's going to be hard to expand on a low budget. You probably need to focus on maybe even rein it in, right?
Yeah.
I did a consult for an e-commerce company, that small startup kind of e-commerce company, and they wanted to go national. It's like, okay, what's your budget? And they told me, I'm like, you don't have the budget to go national. Let's focus on, your 10 top cities where your target demographic is, where your ideal clients are likely to come from.
Yeah.
Any other, Paul, any other thoughts about kind of prioritizing if resources are tight, or, even the risks of underfunding?
Well, Ian had talked about the lifetime value of the client and how important that is. And because if the lifetime value of a client is $15,000 and it costs you $1,000 or $1,500 to acquire that customer, would you do that? I'd do that all day.
Assuming you can serve the customer for a lot less than that, right? Like,
Well,
operationally, you have to be making money. That
right.
I just throw that in because I've seen it where margins are so tight that it doesn't make any sense sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Raise your margins.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up this topic, again, Paul, we can stick with you since we got you talking here. Are there any common mistakes that businesses make when they're setting a budget that you want to hit on? Or
Yeah, they don't spend enough. I mean, that's look, it's honestly, you see it all the time. Ken mentioned it, Ian mentioned it. It's like I want to target my entire service area, but I only have a few $100s a month. I mean, I think it was Ian said that some of his dental clients, they live in a bubble, and you have to be realistic about your competition and the market and lifetime value of the customer and your margins, like Ian just mentioned. And you have to do it strategically. And you see it all the time with a lot of small businesses. A marketing budget is kind of an afterthought. They say, okay, I have this cost and this cost and this cost. And then someone comes along and says,
what's
well,
left?
yeah, it's you should be spending $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month, whatever it is, on your marketing budget. And like, well, I don't have that. It's because you didn't think about it.
Well, and again, if you're going to get 10x, and I realize there's a lot of skepticism out there because there's a lot of bad actors out there. There's no doubt. But if you're going to get 10x, does it make sense for you to get a business line of credit, to where you can make that investment? I'm not advocating that, but I don't ever hear anybody talk about that. But again, if you're going to go put $100 in a machine and it's going to generate and spit out, 6 times the $100 that you put in, would you not borrow money to make that happen if you didn't have the money right now? If granted that you have the runway and the ability to pay it off and stuff like that, but it's just people, it's so frustrating because people, I don't know if it's because we live in a world where we get fast feedback on most things that we do anymore, or we live in a month-to-month world where you can sign up for Apple TV for a month, cancel it, maybe 2 months later you sign up for Netflix, get it for a month, cancel it. But the reality is you need data to make good decisions. And without that data over a period of time, you can't determine what are the best channels that are giving you the best return on investment. And, and even then, some of that return on investment that you're getting may be an assist from one of the channels that you think isn't doing very much for you. It's really hard to 100% fully attribute, results from specific channels. I mean, if you're just running Google ads, you can't even do it there because people rarely convert the first time they visit your website. The reason they may click on your website is because they clicked on that ad, but then they may go research you. They may go read your Google reviews or your reviews on another website that might be relevant for the type of business that you have. They may go check you out on social media, and then they may come back and they may click on your website. And that's not always that assisted conversion attribution is not an easy thing to measure 100% accurately.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest challenges or mistakes I think we've already talked about, but to bring it into this mistake conversation, is the lack of strategy, right? We talked about goal-driven budgeting to be one of the gold standard. Really, that's the best way to do it. But if you haven't defined your goals in a strategic marketing plan and chosen the strategies that are going to help you achieve those goals, then like that to me is one of the biggest misses businesses can make.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And, going back to what Ken was saying about attribution, now you have these browsers out there like DuckDuckGo, which makes it even harder to track those conversions and what they're doing, because the whole purpose of it is to anonymize their activity.
Yeah, I mean, there's only an increase in privacy laws, across the globe, U.S., Canada, wherever, and the goal is to make it hard to be able to, to have access to information that contains a lot of personal information. So that's not going to stop anytime soon. It's actually going to accelerate in the opposite direction and make it harder to track.
Mhm. So let's move on to our next topic area, which is effective use of resources. So you got a marketing budget set. You want to make sure you get the most for it, right? So Ian, let's go to you for the first question. How do you determine the most effective marketing channels for your business?
Yeah, I think, sorry, I sound a little bit like a broken record, but I think strategy, right? I think until because so when we talk about strategic marketing planning, I think all of us agree on this podcast that includes data-driven insights. So starting with benchmarking, starting with audits, so that you understand this is where we are today, this is where our competition is today, so that we understand, okay, there's either we're crushing it and maybe we don't need to spend a lot of money or add resources to it, right? But in most cases, if you're talking to a marketing consultant, there's a reason you're talking to them, right? You're not seeing the results, you're not getting the goals you want. And then going through that process of mapping out who is our ideal customer. And that always, the response of almost any business I talk to is, well, we know who our ideal customers are. And so then you start to probe a little bit more, and they don't, right? They haven't defined who their ideal customers are. The dentist might think anyone with teeth is an ideal customer, right? Window and door company might think anybody with a home older than 10 years is an ideal customer, but that's not true. You need to define who are your most profitable customers that you can go after, define them, figure out which strategies you're going to employ to connect with them. And that will help you understand which channels to focus on, right? So, interesting discussion I had with a client this week was they wanted to dip their toe into TikTok ads, right? They're a professional services firm. I tried to lower their expectations because they happened to see another professional services firm in their industry on TikTok doing some ads. And you get, shiny object syndrome, not just because your competition's there, even though these guys aren't direct competitors. They see the number of views or the number of times the ad was presented, right? It's 30,000. Wow, that's amazing. And then they say, wow, 23 comments were done on this. And then you read the comments and they're all bad. And you're like, what are you guys looking at? Right? Like, is this where your ideal customer is spending time? So there's a lot that goes into that, but you have to know your audience. I would even say what's working now for your business, excuse me, what's not working and what opportunities exist. And then you have to test. You have to, just as I said, like, I'm not opposed to clients having us test TikTok ads for them, even in the professional services world. If they want to spend some money there, to me, it's a test. It's a test project, right? I would love to see them be successful there. I would love that to turn into 50x, 500x for them. My professional expertise is, my spidey sense is telling me it's not going to work, but I'm happy to try that for them and put expertise into it and see what happens. But the knowing where your channels are is really only a question of where are your customers? Where do my customers, my ideal customers, clients, patients, prospects, where do they spend time? Where do they search for my services or products? Where do they interact socially, right? Like, those questions have never changed. Exactly the same questions when newspaper and TV advertising were big, right? Which newspaper do they read? Where, it's the same thing. Nothing's really changed that way.
So hopefully, and when people talk to you about this TikTok ad experiment, they're not pulling money away from what they're doing that's already working well. It needs to be added on because, again, it's an experiment that you don't know the results. And if it kills it, like you said, great. Then maybe you can replace that with some of the existing spend that you're doing. But you shouldn't do it until you know.
Yeah. And that's how we talked about it. An extra layer. If you want to add this layer onto what's already working, let's do it. Right. But don't starve the marketing fundamentals that are going to get you results. Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's what a lot of businesses do is they chase that shiny object, or, again, I can't tell you the number of times I hear people say, oh, well, I went to this conference and, this guy that runs a business or this woman who runs a business, they said they were just doing everything they do, they get through social media. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, there are businesses that literally that's all they do and they're very good at it. You don't know the circumstances. They may have 1,000 friends that are super active on social media that promote the heck out of them, that, and do you have that same situation? Do you have the aptitude to create the content that they're creating? It's not the channel, especially I think in social media, it's often the power of the personality. It's not necessarily the channel. It could be the channel. There's certainly elements of the channel, but often with social media, it's the power of personality.
I've actually never seen, so I hear the exact same things you do, Ken. I talk to prospects, I talk to clients about it. Oh, I heard this person. I have never actually seen in any of the industries that I support, and we support a lot, a competitor who is absolutely crushing it on social media, and that's the primary channel that's delivering leads and customers to them. And why I actually say that is if a client comes to me and they say, hey, I was at a show and here's the person's name and here's their social channel and they're crushing it, or just like this TikTok conversation, hey, I saw this ad and I saw all these responses and like they're doing great. This must be amazing. We got to get on this. Just like I did with the TikTok ads, I look into the social channel. I find out how many followers they have. We had this conversation with a Windows and Doors client a few years ago because they saw their competition. We track followers and engagement and stuff in social networks that we're covering for our clients. One of their competitors just blew up. They were doing a follower campaign. They went from 2,000 followers to like 15,000 followers. But when we actually, which looks really imposing, like, man, how are we going to do that? But then we started digging into who are their followers. They weren't even local followers. They were buying followers overseas,
right?
Which for a local business, it may give you greater exposure, but those aren't your ideal customers. Your people engaging in your content, if they're overseas and you're a local business, that doesn't really help you.
It's a very expensive way to get a very minority effect in the algorithm.
It may actually hurt.
Yeah.
Let me jump to another question that obviously we have a self-interest in answering one way. So let me phrase it as, the question between in-house marketing team or outsourced agency. How do you guys position that when somebody starts talking about that?
Well, define an in-house marketing team.
Well, here's an example.
Are you talking about hiring multiple people with expertise in specific areas, such as an agency has?
Well, you're getting to the answer. Here's the way it was framed to me by a prospective client I was having a conversation with. I presented a proposal to him for $5,000 a month. He said, $5,000 a month, that's $60,000 a year. I'll just go hire somebody. So
that's not a team.
Yeah.
What's that, Paul?
That's not a team.
No.
That's
but the notion of I'll just go hire somebody or a couple of whatever. How pros and cons of that versus outsourcing versus working with an agency, especially as it relates to budget?
Well, because like I said, define an in-house marketing team, and like the answer you got, you're going to hire one person. That one person is not going to have the breadth of experience and expertise that an agency is going to have. And it's going to cost you the same amount of money, probably.
Probably
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Probably more. And the
Well-
key that the business owner always, without fault, they always forget this element. They think this person, first of all, is magically going to know how to do SEO, pay-per-click, conversion metrics, email marketing, everything,
Graphics,
multi-channel. Yep. It's going to be beautiful. And they're going to have a strategic mindset first. They're going to understand how to translate that into, marketing strategies, and then employ those marketing strategies themselves without hiring other people, other vendors. They're going to have all the software at their disposal that an agency would. But the biggest thing, so all of those things are bad, right? And I'm not saying in-house can't work, but the biggest thing that's overlooked by every business owner I've ever had this discussion with is their time and their energy, and who's going to manage the person, and what gives you expertise to manage a marketing manager. And so all of those things taken into account, why wouldn't you invest in the very best people you possibly could to do the very best job you possibly could to give you a competitive disadvantage, or being you have a competitive advantage, right? You've now crushed your competition because you have the best at your disposal. You're paying a fraction of the overall cost of gathering those experts, and you're probably paying a mid-level marketer's wage to that agency. Like the pluses, like I've done comparison sheets for people that I talk to now, where I just lay it all out. I'm like, these are the questions you should be considering, because there are so many things you're not thinking about. And I understand why you're thinking this way, because it gives you, in your view, control. Control is the biggest thing a business owner wants next to success, right? I want control, but it doesn't give them control. It actually gives them more chaos in their business, for sure.
I would argue they have more control when they're dealing with one point of contact at an agency than when they're trying to scatter their time and their attention and their energy across multiple different things and figure it all out and keep it all running.
Yeah. A couple of points. When you say $60,000, it's usually not $60,000. It's usually 30 to 50% on top of that by the time you factor in
taxes and overhead.
Benefits, all that kind of stuff. The other thing, which is interesting, I'll be curious to hear how you answer this, Ian, is, okay, well, I know I've got this person for 40 hours a week. I'm not getting 40 hours a week from a marketing company when I pay that same amount. What's your response to them? Because I think that's a fair question.
So my response is usually what activities need to be done are going to be done by our team, because we actually have multiple people working on them. So the equivalent might be 40 hours per week, but the actual time spent doesn't even matter, because the efficiencies that we bring and the expertise we bring means that the actions that are being done in a way that far outweighs what an in-house person can do. The one thing too that people forget is most of us are really, really good at a few things, right? So especially when I hear, but especially when I hear people are like, well, I'll just hire a junior marketer. Junior marketers are awesome because they're full of energy. They have lots of spunk. They want to, rule the world of marketing, because we were all there once. But the thing is that they have very little life experience, strategically creating strategies and then implementing those strategies. And they might be really good in one or two marketing areas, but until you can bring a holistic approach, which is what a good agency will do, you're always at a disadvantage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not to the point of, you're not buying 40 hours a week. You're buying X amount of results, $60,000 a year. It's not $60,000 worth of somebody's time. It's $60,000 worth of results. And then you can go back to the ROI discussion of what that should drive in terms of your top line revenue. I will tell people, at some point you will grow large enough, it may make sense to bring it in-house, but that's probably not until you're at least $5 million, maybe closer to 10, because it does take a team. One person, like you said, that they can't do it all. It'd be a unicorn. So you're going to need 3, 4, 5 people. And even then you'll need somebody to help you find them. You'll know how to screen them, how to interview them. And a consultant or an agency can play a role in that. We're coming up on our hour. Actually, we just hit it. I looked at the clock. Is there any parting thoughts? We had a whole lot more we could talk about for sure. Maybe we circle back around to this in a month or two. Any other parting thoughts anyone wants to leave?
I just think
it's hard. Find a good partner, man.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to be flippant about this, but it's like chances are you're not spending enough money on marketing because and again, I hate to generalize, but a lot of businesses don't put the work in to create the strategy to know what they should be spending in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, they think and maybe they're spending a lot of money on marketing, but if you haven't put the work in, you probably need to spend more, honestly, to get the results that you expect.
So if I could sum up what you said, I think it's strategy first. Be realistic with planning and budgeting, and take that growth, target model, bottom up approach to setting the budget based on the growth that you want to achieve and what the numbers say it'll take to get it. Reverse engineer the funnel, and then be realistic about who can get that done. Ian?
Yep. Uh-oh.
Yep. I think you were starting to say something at the same time I started, and I didn't let you finish. How rude of me.
No. I think we've covered this really well. I'll hold my thoughts for the next time we dig into it. All I was going to say, though, was don't let past non-strategic marketing decisions and the failure of those marketing decisions hold you back from investing wisely in marketing today, right? Because we've all heard it. Well, email marketing doesn't work because I tried it. But if you didn't try it strategically, then you weren't doing it properly, right? So, don't let that affect
timing
your
matters
budget.
too. Things that didn't work 3 years ago might work right now. Things that are working well today may fail miserably next year. So it's constantly be evolving and experimenting. Paul, any last thoughts?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. Well, we didn't cover it. Like you said, there's a lot more we could talk about, but we're out of time.
All right, well, let's wrap it up here. I want to leave everyone with a quote from Peter Drucker. The business enterprise has 2 and only 2 basic functions: marketing and innovation. All the rest are costs. In other words, you have to have something to sell, product or service, and you have to go out and get buyers. Don't build a better mousetrap and expect people to magically show up at your door and line up to buy it. It's not likely to happen. So I'd like to say thanks to each of the marketing experts here today, and to your audience for joining us. We hope you found this valuable. Please share the link to it, and so other businesses can benefit from it, and follow us on the platforms we're on, or subscribe to the podcast on any of the major podcast platforms. Ian, you want to take us out?
And if you want help with your marketing budget, talk to one of the pros here. Until next week, folks, keep calm and market on.
Thanks, everyone.